You hit what you aim at. And if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. Zig Ziglar.
Welcome to the Millennial Experiment. I'm Nolan Newman. I'm here with my best bud, Corey Kleinfeld. This is the show dedicated to helping each other become the best versions of ourselves while using a series of experiments to help aid in the process. We will explore a typical millennial upbringing and talk about topics like money, society, and culture. We'll also provide an experiment to help break your normal routine of life and help you become a better person. We'll be doing these experiments with you to be your accountability partners.
And today our topic is about money. Our guest is Erin Lowry. She is a millennial personal finance expert, a speaker, and the author of The Broke Millennial. Stop scraping by and get your financial life together. She has been featured on CNBC, CBS Sunday Morning, Wall Street Journal, Cosmo, Forbes, and USA Today. It was an awesome conversation, and we hope you guys enjoy it. Question is, what do you think of when you hear the word millennial?
Awesome.
Yes, I love it. Next
Finally,
question.
Someone said it.
I mean, if we don't give ourselves gold stars and participation trophies, who will?
That's very true.
I think there's a level of delusional narcissism that is a streak in our generation, but I also think that is the breeding ground for entrepreneurship and business-minded people. And, my joke is A, we didn't give ourselves the participation trophies, and B, I think you do have to have some level of being overly confident and delusionally narcissistic in order to pursue those big dreams.
Fantastic.
That's good. You don't hear like a lot of that perspective because it is most of the time just berating millennials of narcissism, entitled, and that's actually a good perspective and breath of fresh air, actually, to think.
Absolutely.
We are, let's pride our generation, right? Like, we're doing stuff, right? So
I mean, it's a time-honored tradition that every generation shits on the next generation. Mm-hmm, so without fail, we will shit on Gen Z. Like, it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
So I just think that we're in the thick of it. We're almost on the other side. Gen Z's coming up real hot and heavy. They called us digital natives, but most of us remember dying of dysentery playing Oregon Trail. So
Absolutely.
I think that, we're going to see what really happens when an entire generation is legitimately reared on digital.
Mm-hmm.
That will be fascinating. So let's start in the very beginning. We're going to ask a lot of money questions, get into your new book and kind of your story, but let's start from the beginning. For those of you that don't know who you are and haven't heard about your Krispy Kreme story, can you summarize that for us?
It was a hot summer's day in 1996. That's legitimately how the book opens. And as short as I can say it, I really should have an elevator pitch version of the story at this point, but it's really hard to do so. The shortest version is, my parents were not big fans of handing out money. So my sister and I, both at very young ages, had to figure out ways that we could earn. And when you are 7, your earning potential is very limited to possibly cat sitting the demon cat that lives next door. But that was just purely based on when the neighbors were out of town. And friendship bracelet making, maybe. So my friendship bracelet making business had gone belly up, and it was the summertime. So demand was plummeting. And I came up with the idea to sell Krispy Kreme donuts at a yard sale that my mom was hosting. So I asked my dad if he would stake me and go and pick up the donuts because I was 7 and could not drive, and also cover the upfront cost. And he agreed. So I sell out all of these donuts. My little sister helped me for a little bit, and he comes over at the end, looks at my pile of quarters, which was, let's say, $20, and says, all right, well, it cost me $8 to buy you the donuts, and then your sister worked for you for a little bit, so we're going to pay her $2, so your net profit is $10. And then he took the money, because I think that's the really important part of this story, is that he didn't just explain it, he actually enacted. So I went from getting 2 Nerf Super Soakers to 1 Nerf Super Soaker.
In your mind, you had 2 new Super Soakers in your mind that you were going to get, but you only got 1.
Oh, I was going to dominate the pool that summer, and then all of a sudden it completely went out the window.
Just like Rambo walk into the pool with 2 Super Soakers in your hand.
I was coming in hot. It was going to be epic.
But what did he teach you? I mean, he taught you about, the upfront capital and paying other people and so many values there that most kids aren't getting at that particular age, which is, I mean, obviously why I asked it. I knew the story already, but there's so many lessons in that, and it's not just like, oh, you get $10 a week for existing in my family as an allowance.
Right, and the other thing is that he was showing me that money didn't work the way I thought it did. This was not an idealized version of the world, and that even when you work, you're going to have to not get everything that you thought you were or that you felt that you were owed. My dad actually, this isn't in the book, this is a story that my dad likes to share, and I haven't actually written a blog post about it, but I should. He calls it the TCBY story. And if you're not familiar, TCBY is it's not froyo, it's more like ice cream. Cookies, but it's like technically yogurt. Yeah. And so when I was a kid, I loved TCBY. And my dad goes, I can't believe you haven't told this story, because the short version is, again, I'm trying to tell short stories. We'll see what happens. But my mom was really great about getting us into like modeling and voice acting when we were really little kids. And so I was 8 or 9 years old, living outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So if anybody knows the area, I lived in Gastonia. And I was picked to be in a commercial for a local power plant. And all I had to do was sit in an inner tube on Lake Norman and play around with 2 other kids and like splash in the water for a couple of hours. And I got paid something like $1,000. But when I got the check, it was a physical check, and I had never really experienced one of those before, so I couldn't comprehend how much money that meant I had. I was kind of reverting back to like the Krispy Kreme thing, where like I had $10 physically in my hand. I knew what that could buy. I knew what that meant. And so my dad, in order to teach me a lesson, took me to TCBY and was like, okay, now you know how you spent like the whole day in the grueling sun with the Krispy Kreme donuts and you had to do all of that work and you only got $10? Now with this piece of paper, he goes, and you could get like maybe 2 ice cream cones, but with this piece of paper, and you only worked a couple of hours, and you can buy all of the yogurt. So the point is, it is like, so the point is, you want to find the kind of work that pays you higher. And you don't want to have to be doing the manual labor. And that was the first time he was kind of teaching me about, and pardon the archaic socioeconomic terms, but the difference between white collar and blue collar, and what it meant to kind of trade, mind instead of body in terms of how you're actually earning your income.
For sure. So I'll ask one more question on this, and I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast on parenting and teaching your kids about money, but how important were those lessons to you, do you think, for what you're doing now? I mean, I don't think you grew up thinking you would be a financial blogger and expert, but how important were those times or those lessons into what you're doing now?
They're the complete bedrock of my financial education. And
Hear that,
it's not just that it set me up for what I do now, but it set me up to be fiscally responsible in college and then right out of college at a time of life that's so tender that most people are not making practical financial decisions. And at 18, I was very analytical about my money, so much so that I picked my college based on not, hey, I want to go here the most. It was, hey, I get to graduate here debt-free. So that is not a common scenario, and it's because my dad and my mom, but really my dad kind of took the forefront in a lot of these, teaching these little financial scenarios. Now, my mom really modeled frugality in an amazing way, where I'm very aware of how I spend my money and what I spend it on. And, it's just been a very interesting development where I went to college for journalism and theater. Like, I was not being bred or groomed to do any sort of financial focused work. But that's part of my backstory, and that's kind of part of my pitch to people, is that if I can do it, you can do it. I won't accept any of these like, I hate math, I'm not good with numbers type rhetoric. So your backstory and your history and how you grew up has so much impact on how you're going to handle money as an adult. And so often we just talk about the black and white instead of the shades of gray that have to do with personal finance. And we also don't focus enough on how it's completely emotional. It is not rational.
It's
For sure. Yeah.
It's missing so much. Obviously, when we grew up, millennial generation, if we didn't have parents like that, they sort of relied on the education system to teach us those things. Obviously, they don't teach us any of what you just talked about, right? So it's just like from a moving forward perspective, how much emphasis on the parents to translate these ideas on frugality, money, all that stuff, until the education gets there. It's just so important, my parents weren't like that at all. I had to figure that out. I wish they were, but
that's your next book, Erin.
Yeah.
Written to the baby boomers, not the millennials themselves.
May or may not be a thought process, but I do think that just putting that out into the universe. But I do think that while there is this disconnect where teachers think parents handle it and parents think teachers handle it, the other issue is that our education system can only do so much. I think a lot of these lessons have to be real world experiences. Mm-hmm. And so sitting and reading a textbook can only take you so far. Mm-hmm. And there's only so much that a school can do in terms of like modeling or setting up some sort of simulated scenario about how you can handle money. And what parents can be doing is having frank conversations about how money works. Now, my family is atypical in this regard. Like, we are so at the opposite end of the spectrum on talking about taboo topics, to the point that, like, we have jokes about death and wills and inheritances and stuff. Like, that's a very common conversation in my household. We have no hangups with talking about money or death. Sex is another thing, but money and death we do not have taboo issues with. But I do think that parents can do a better job of doing something as simply as, if you make a purchase in front of your child and you pay with a credit card, as is normal now, have that child sit with you at the end of the month as you pay the credit card bill. So there's a connection now between swiping this plastic and having to pay it off. Those are things that are now linked, as opposed to there's this magical thing that enables you to buy stuff and you don't see the other side.
For free, exactly. Yeah. What age do you think? 7?
Yeah, I would start young. I would start having these conversations between 5 and 7.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. Well, this is something that I read from your blog, and it kind of fits to what you're talking about right now. But can you tell us what it means to get financially naked?
Yes.
I love that, by the way.
Good segue.
Is it because I said the
taboo.
word sex a couple of seconds
Taboo,
ago?
yeah.
No, yeah.
Damn male brain.
Getting financially naked is the process of taking it all off with your partner when you're talking about money. Mm-hmm. And that chapter of the book does have many metaphors to the other thing that you take all off with your partner and what you're doing. But with getting financially naked, there's lots to break down in this topic. But the big one is it's total transparency and honesty. It's talking about things that can feel awkward and painful, like how much debt you have. It's also talking about goals. It's talking about how you two are going to handle this as a team, what kind of system you would want to put in place when you're married, or if you're already married moving forward. And it's an evolving conversation. A decision that you made 3 years ago might not make sense in your lives anymore. But the number one tip that I have is have an excellent poker face going into this conversation, because if you get physically naked in front of another human being and he or she laughs at you or makes a sarcastic comment or rolls their eyes or what have you, you are not likely to get naked in front of that person again. So same with getting financially naked. It's a very vulnerable, intimate act. So go in with a poker face so you're not making your partner uncomfortable.
So
that's good.
Yeah. Is our generation good at this? Because if you look at previous generations versus current ones about going back to talking just about sex or about other things in more open, and more openly than I think our previous generations have. Are we good at this?
Getting financially naked? No.
Yes.
Talking about
No, we're not.
sex?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's
So
mind-boggling.
similar, but it's different. That's interesting because, you can
Yeah,
have a
I
one-night
mean-
stand, but you can't tell somebody you got 10 grand in debt.
Oh, you
It's
can have a
interesting.
one-night stand. You can share your favorite sexual positions with a coworker. You can be talking
Yeah.
about, like, STDs. Like, it's amazing how open people get about sexual things. Not everyone, but a lot of
No.
people. And, as soon as you ask somebody how much credit card debt do you have or what's the
Or how
number in
much
your
you
bank
make.
account. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's another biggie. How much do you make?
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. I do feel it's not the final frontier in terms of taboos, but it's definitely one of the biggest ones I hope we get over in the next couple of decades. I'm hoping Gen Z is the generation that changes it all. Maybe we won't have to
Yeah.
shit on them. I'm just kidding. We will. We'll definitely do that. But
It's a hard conversation to have too.
it is.
It's really easy. You're like, oh, hey, Netflix, and or you just like think in the back of your mind, like, I don't really want to have this conversation right now because I just know it's gonna get deep. We're gonna have our poker face on. We're gonna get serious, and it's just, I think for people who aren't used to having that conversation, it's so easy to avoid all the time.
It is. You also need to take it a little bit at a time, though. And you don't have to get financially naked all at once. I do make jokes in the book about, like, there's foreplay. You can lay the groundwork and all of that. And, a big part of it is you don't want to be an aggressor. So it doesn't need to be like, hey, how much debt do you have? That's not a great way to open this conversation unless the two of you are just that blunt and you know that your partner would respond to that. Usually defense immediately goes up and people get a little irritable. So my recommendation would be to start with something that's more like, hey, what is a financial goal that you have in the next 5 years? And both of you share your ideas, first seeing if they're somewhat compatible, and then asking, okay, what stands in the way of you accomplishing that? And that's a great way to backdoor into the debt. Sorry. It's a great way to backdoor into the debt conversation.
Is this just significant other? You're talking about friends, family? I mean, you would think with anybody, right? In different
Definitely
forms.
significant other.
For sure.
And especially if it's somebody you plan to marry.
Yeah.
Parents are also really important because you need to know if you are your parents' retirement plan.
Yes,
That's a fair
that's
point.
solid. That's a solid point.
I do think that a lot of people, don't quite realize the potential that they are their parents' retirement plan. You're going to get a lot of resistance when you try to have this conversation with your parents. So that's the other thing you need to be intimately aware of. You're kind of flipping the script where you're becoming more of the adult, and they'll probably take it a little bit as an attack or a judgment. So you have to be really tactful with how you approach that conversation. But think about it this way. If your parents paid for your college education in full, there's a good chance they might have raided some retirement savings to do it.
Mm-hmm. So and we talked about this a second ago, do you have any ideas of how our millennial generation differs from the previous generations in the money department? I think one of them for sure is college debt. Obviously, our generation is coming out with more college debt than any previous generation ever has. And just touch on that too, whether you think it's a requirement, I guess, to go to college, and how we differ.
Student loan debt is a huge issue, especially considering that as millennials marry each other, they're often both bringing debt to the table. So you could be starting your married life easily $60,000 to $100,000 in the hole, which is a bit of a precarious way to begin your married life, especially if you're not having these financial conversations and getting financially naked and making a plan. And beyond that, I don't think it's a requirement. I don't really consider it good debt. I think it's been marketed that way to us, that we are told from a very young age the only way to get ahead in life is to go to college and get a 4-year college degree. And I think that framework needs to be rewritten a little bit, not just because it's way overinflated and the price point is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to name brand colleges. You can get a perfectly fine education that will get you far at state schools and at smaller liberal arts schools that will offer you scholarship money. So it's not always about the name. I also think we undervalue things like trade schools and teaching people who maybe the 4-year path just isn't the right fit. maybe that's not how they think. Maybe that's not what they're interested in doing. And the fact that trade schools are not really considered and pushed is the wrong word, but talked about by career counselors in high schools really irks me.
They don't get paid for that. They get judged
true.
They get judged based on how many kids get into their top choice college usually.
Which is frustrating. Like, that's a stupid, outdated system.
Yes.
But the other thing that's very different for us is how we interact with money. The fact that money is so digital and that we're not interacting with it as physical currency much anymore. And I think that is changing how we think about it, and not necessarily for the better.
So, like, what would you say? I mean, you had these really practical values pressed down from your dad, and you could see it, you could touch it. You saw the value of selling the Krispy Kreme, getting the Super Soaker so you could spray the other kids. That kind of teaching, like, how do we, in this technology overload world for our generation and for the next generation, translate what your dad did to us? Like, say someone had never, their parents were just in the dark all the time about their finances. Like, how do they learn how to get to this financial level, financially literate level?
That's something that I definitely work with a lot of people on, because I'm addressing the problem now on the back end. Like, we're grown up, we're dealing with it. We've already taken out the student loan debt. We've already racked up the credit card debt, whatever it is. I think the big thing is to, one, address your psychological relationship to money. Why do you react the way that you do to money? What are some of your earliest memories of money? How does money make you feel? So addressing those underlying psychological issues and reflecting on them before you can move forward. And then once you can start to move forward, creating systems that kind of protect you from yourself. And that could be as simple as, if you tend to overspend constantly, take the credit cards out of your wallet. Or if you always dip into your savings account every month, put it at a different bank than your checking account, so you're not seeing it when you log into your checking account. They're like tiny little things like that that can really help protect you from yourself and your potentially bad behaviors.
And there's a lot of strategies in your book, right?
Yes, there are.
The Broke Millennial, obviously. Got to grab it. So you got to plug. So you said earlier that if you can do it, then anyone can. And I just want to see if you can expand on that a little bit. Obviously, you don't just wake up one day and become financially literate or successful or in the job or whatever you want to do. So what is needed to be take yourself from not knowing anything to being literate and then getting where you want in your career and your nest egg? Like, what is it? Is it just constant learning?
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, that was a big... Yeah, sometimes the questions ramble. That's 3 different questions.
Well, I think the first thing is that I do address and acknowledge my privilege, in that I came from a family that was always comfortable with money, not just in terms of talking about it, but in terms of where we were on the socioeconomic totem pole. So I do understand that when I can sometimes flippantly say, well, if I can do it, you can do it, that a lot of people are like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
So what I mean more is my mental relationship to money, that instead of letting it intimidate me because I, again, hated math, wasn't good with math, it was my worst subject in school, and had that kind of a hang up when it came to numbers, and could move beyond something like that in order to handle money. I think we just get force-fed all of these scripts about how money works, and that things like investing is gambling and it should only be done by the experts, and, oh, it's okay, you can have, especially this is more women specific, but like, it's okay, someone will handle this for you in the future type rhetoric that can often get handed down. That's dangerous to people. And I just mean more that even if you are, and the other one is the starving artist idea. I hate that one too.
You have to be, yeah.
Yeah, like, you don't have to be starving to do your art or to be considered an artist. Like, scrap that idea, please. So it's more that even if you are not mathematical or analytical or any of the terms that are often associated with money, you still can be a baller when it comes to handling your own financial life. And that doesn't mean having a ton of money. that means you are in control. That is all I mean by this, is that you have two options in life. You control your money or your money controls you. And my entire point is to make sure that you feel in control. So when I moved to New York City, I was making about $23,000. For a reference point, the poverty line here is 19. So I was not exactly swimming in cash, Scrooge McDuck style, but I knew how to handle it. And therefore, it wasn't as stressful as it could have been, because I knew how to set up systems. I knew how to live within the means that I could. My rent was an astronomical amount of my monthly take-home pay, but I figured out how to find fun for free, or, doing things that, by other people's standards were, for example, I was a barista at a well-known mermaid logoed coffee chain, and I noticed that they tended to throw out the quote-unquote expired food at the end of the night that clearly was completely edible. And so I started to ask, why are we throwing this out? Can I just take it home? And they said, yeah, I don't care. Yeah. So I cannot tell you how many bistro boxes and paninis and cake pops I lived off of my early years. So it's doing those kind of things, kind of whatever your resources are. And I know a lot of people feel like those methods are a little extreme, but it's what I had to do, not only to get by, but to feel on top of my money, because then it meant my grocery bill was lower. And, I didn't go out to fancy brunches at that phase of my life, and I spent money on what I valued. And it's learning all of these kind of systems that, as you then grow in your career and you start to earn more money, and the other thing is learning how to negotiate. That is a very important skill that everyone can do, which is also a chapter in the book, plug for Broke Millennial. But I think that these are the systems that we have to start learning and start teaching each other.
You unpacked that. Fantastic. It was great. So we've talked about the book, about money, a lot about that. I also wanted to see if we could touch a little bit on you personally.
Sure.
It's interesting that we have a millennial teaching other millennials. Obviously, the generation is 18 to 20 years big, but it's nice to have that. We can have the perspective coming from someone who is a millennial teaching us. You moved to New York, made, what'd you say, $23,000. You were, I think, working at Starbucks, and you started freelance writing of some sort. And now
not
you have
quite
a book.
yet.
Okay, well, lead us down that path then.
Yeah. So to back it up all the way to the beginning, I moved here to be a page for The Late Show with David Letterman, but it didn't pay a whole heck of a lot, and it wasn't a full 40-hour work week either. So I would wake up at about 4 o'clock in the morning. I would go to Starbucks and do the opening shift there. Then I would go to the Letterman gig, which was from about noon to 4 or 1 to 7, depending on the show day. And then I would babysit. So I was working 3 jobs, pulling 70 to 80-hour weeks most of the time, all of which were jobs that required standing on my feet. So I understand exhaustion on a small scale, since I didn't have to do it for a whole lot of my life. But I was hustling as cliche as you could be, New York City, early 20-something, very classic tale. After the Letterman gig ended, that was a 1-year program, that's when I shifted into public relations. And at that point, I was just doing PR and the occasional babysitting to help supplement, because PR paid $37,500. Which at the time felt like I was swimming in cash.
Yeah, that's 50% increase.
Yeah, that felt amazing. And then I would babysit on the side to have a little bit of extra income. And it was at that phase in 2013 that I started Broke Millennial, the blog. And then that was just for fun. I've honestly never really monetized it either. I don't make money off Broke Millennial. I use it as more of a way to leverage into other opportunities like freelance writing, like speaking, and ultimately the book, which I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding, and they think that if you have a book, you're somehow rich, which,
yes,
let me tell you, having a published book is really cool, but it does not make you rich unless you're J.K. Rowling level status. So it's definitely given me more credibility and opened more doors for things like speaking at colleges, speaking at companies, all of that. But, I haven't even earned back my advance, and my advance was not huge. So I am not swimming in cash from the book.
So there's a lot of bloggers, of writers out there. How did you get from, even still, I mean, you're not rich off of writing a book, but you wrote a book and it's published and it's in Barnes and Nobles and all over. That's a fantastic achievement. So how do you get from just PR and some writing to getting a book deal? Like, what does that look like? Was it luck? Was it a 2 years of intentional pushing for it?
Yeah, it's a mix. It's a mix of hard work and luck and timing.
Yeah.
You know, I am not going to discount a stroke of luck in this process, because it's actually the acknowledgement. Oh, go ahead.
I tell Nolan the other day that luck, there's a saying, is that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so you were prepared for it and ready for it, and the opportunity happened to come by, and people say, well, Erin's so lucky that she got the book deal. But it's not all true.
It is a mix. Is that a Seneca thing? Because it definitely sounds like a Seneca thing.
We could call that. That sounds nice. It's stoicism for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely, shout out Tim Ferriss. It definitely sounds like that. I have heard that quote before. Mm-hmm. I do think there's also the other quote or question more, is it better to be lucky or to be good?
Yeah.
And that's a whole other podcast episode. We could just talk about that one topic. But the short version, what happened for me, I was in PR for a while, not loving it. And I ended up switching jobs and going to a startup that was like a fintech startup that compared financial products. No, not NerdWallet, just putting that out there. It was not NerdWallet. And so I really cut my teeth there in terms of learning the ins and outs of how financial products work and like what the banks are doing to screw us and all of that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of great education for me. So at that point, though, I was also building up freelance writing and building the blog and starting to do more media appearances as Broke Millennial. And I was on CBS Sunday Morning in a segment that was not actually very money focused. It was more specific to millennials in the workplace, that they just found me. And so I did this little bit about how we are in the workplace and what to expect from millennials. It was baked into a larger segment, and a literary agent here in New York City saw the segment, went to my site, liked my writing style, reached out to me and asked if I'd ever thought about doing a book. I actually had, interestingly enough, had a book offer prior, but it was at a very small publishing shop that was like a step above Vanity Publishing, and I was like, I'm going to hold out and see if I can catch a bigger fish.
So, I mean, that's like no luck at all. I mean, basically, I mean, the guy or girl went to your website and saw that you had the great writing style, and obviously you're a journalism major. I think that's fantastic. How important is living in New York?
To my career, or to me personally, or both?
Well, I was thinking career when I asked it.
Career-wise, it's incredibly important because I also value media exposure. So being able to do things short notice, for instance, I have gotten a call, like when I was physically on CNBC, not just being written about, but on an actual show, that was I had 2 hours to go from, my freelance sweatpants and t-shirt uniform into fully camera ready down at 30 Rock, getting ready to go into the studio in about an hour and a half. Wow. So because I can do that, it gives me a significant competitive edge. Mm-hmm. This is also a mecca for every big deal person ever comes through here. So if they have an event or if there's an opportunity for a meet and greet, it's, very helpful. And there's definitely a very niche community of personal finance experts, writers, authors, etc., that live here that are very good at also handing off opportunities to each other. So I would say New York, while it is incredibly expensive, I would not earn as much money if I lived anywhere else.
Great answer.
I need to go to New York. I've never been, but I will think about going now.
Also, when you come visit, I will take you to some actual New York places. I think Tourists tend to stay in about like a 20 block radius of Midtown, and then they complain about how it's like super crowded and they could never live here. I'm like, well, no shit. You stayed in like the most touristy, overwhelming section of New York with the worst food. Like, of course you don't want to live here.
People come from across the world to go to that 20-mile radius spot.
And then they eat it like Red Lobster. I can't.
No, I'm down for the local tour for sure.
That's the only way.
Only way. Okay, so one more question, and then we will get into our final questions. But what is your biggest financial failure? And if you don't have one, or it's a little bit of a crazy question, do you have a financial fear, or had one, and how did you get over that?
Oh, I'll take both of those. So my biggest failure is not going to be, I mean, I think people want to hear something like, I got myself into $30,000 of credit card debt by buying, name brand shoes, and then I dug myself out of it. Unfortunately, it's not that fun or painful for me. My biggest financial failure was not learning how to negotiate earlier. And the amount of money that got, the amount of money that got left on the table by me not knowing how to negotiate properly, or better yet, value myself and my abilities. I think that was why I undercut myself in negotiations. The short version of this story, which, plug for the book, also wrote about this in the book, but the short version is, I keep saying I'm going to say short versions of things, guys. Apparently.
And then you keep talking.
But when I was going from PR into that startup, I was employee number 1 at this startup.
Wow.
And I therefore got to create my own job. So I created the job proposal and this whole thing and submitted, and I even vetted it by my parents. I was like, hey, I'd love your feedback. And part of this was kind of fear-based. I didn't want to lose the opportunity because I hated my current PR job so much. I just wanted out. And my anchor was so incredibly low. I had like nominal, not even adjusting for inflation raises. And I think I was earning like not even $39,000 at that point. I think it was at like 38.8 or something stupid. And I remember I was like, okay, well, I'll ask for 50 because that feels like a lot of money, and it feels like a good number. Jump, and it feels, that they're not going to be like, oh, 50, that's way too high. Not only did they not say that, they didn't even counter. Ouch. So as soon as that happened, I was like, yeah. So I did end up going back at my annual review and made a very big case for myself and got a $20,000 raise. But if you think about the fact that I probably could have started at 70 and worked up from there as opposed to starting at 50 and going to 70, yes, that was a painful financial failure and lesson. And in terms of fear, I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to money. I do invest. I am actually a little too risky to a degree, maybe. I should probably start to go a little bit more moderate. But it's the one area of my life that I'm actually not risk adverse, which is bizarre. Otherwise, I totally overthink everything. But I am very fearful about debt, even when it's scenarios like, oh, if you can get a 0% loan on a car, and that money is obviously going to make more invested, and then once it kicks up into higher APR, you just pay it off, whatever. Like, I understand the math, but I am very, very, very wary of debt. And for that reason, a lot of times I just want to pay it off as aggressively as possible. My boyfriend, longtime partner, he has some student loan debt. So once we get married, I just want to pay it down. I don't even want to deal with like, well, it makes more sense to like put a little bit in the market. Blah, blah. Yeah. I'm like, nope, get rid of it.
Gone.
So that's definitely debt and losing my money are two of my big fears.
But it doesn't make you scared of the stock market, though, which is interesting.
No, losing money more in the idea of like getting a major medical emergency that drains everything because our healthcare sucks, or you know, anything like that. That's more just something so outside of my control.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, so we ask all of our all of our guests a few final questions, kind of fun ones. You had some time to prepare for these, but first question.
I didn't overthink these, so they're gonna get pretty off the cuff answers.
Oh, don't overthink them. Yeah, we just gave you a heads up. Whether you looked at them or not, I don't know. But
I might have looked at them the first time we were supposed to record,
Exactly.
and I have subsequently forgotten.
that's okay. You're our professional. If you could make a social media post and you knew it would go viral, what would you say?
Oh, I'm so going to call you guys out on this, being a riff on Tim Ferriss's If You Could Have a Billboard.
Okay. It's the truth.
So because of that, I'm going to give you Tim's answer.
It's
I would tell
millennialized.
people that they are a combination of the 5 people they spend the most time with. Think about that.
Oh, that's a solid burn.
Okay, seriously though, let me think about it for a brief moment.
Yes.
All right, well, why?
Okay, if I could guarantee that something went viral.
Yeah, you knew it was
I'll tell
gonna
you
go
what I would
viral.
tell people. I would say, what do you, all caps, value? Because I don't think enough people identify that for themselves. And, well, first of all, that's where you should be spending your money. But it's also an important thing to know. What do you stand for? What do you value? What's important to you in life?
not even
and I think a
just
lot of
money,
times
though.
we let other people dictate that for us, and we don't spend enough time reflecting on it ourselves.
That's deep. I like it.
I'm so afraid to ask the next question because I feel like she's gonna relate it to Tim Ferriss, but
I can relate a lot of things to Tim Ferriss.
Can't we all?
this next question is from one of our listeners, Tim Ferriss. Do you have any quotes that you are constantly thinking of, or live by, or mottos, or anything like that?
Is it better to be lucky or to be good? No, I'm just kidding.
That's one of them.
Actually, I do have a favorite quote. I wouldn't say it's necessarily, well, it ties back into the investing and debt thing, but I love compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. It is attributed to Albert Einstein. Who the hell knows who actually said it? I feel like you could also be like, Benjamin Franklin said that.
Abraham
Like,
Lincoln.
We just,
Pretty sure it was
yeah,
Lincoln. Yeah.
we just don't really know.
Justin Bieber.
Okay.
Oh, if that's not in his next song, I'll be horribly disappointed.
His next single track is Compounding. That's exactly.
Compound interest, baby. Makes my heart flutter.
This is such a nerdy, like, funny, like, nerdy joke.
I'm a banker, so
Yeah,
compounding. If a song came out called Compound Interest, I would just
You would
fall to the
repeat-
floor.
repeat it.
I'd be dead.
Well, hey, that one song came out. D1, is that his name? The Paying Sally Mae Back song. Have you guys heard this?
No,
actually,
what?
I think
Oh
I
my god, it's
heard
so
about
good.
it, actually.
It's this guy who got signed. So he's a rapper, and he got signed, and he paid off all his student loans with his sign-on bonus. And then he created this amazing song about paying Sally Mae back. It is, you have to Google after this.
That
It's
is
really good.
great.
It'll get stuck in your head too. I'm not going to try to sing it because it's going to be really embarrassing for all of us, but it's worth listening to.
It might just be the intro or outro to the podcast. We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. It needs to be the outro. You
Outro,
can't
got it.
ruin it then.
All right.
Will do.
All right. So we are called the Millennial Experiment. After each of our podcasts, we try to give all of our listeners like an actionable tip, an experiment, and we actually video a lot of these ourselves and put them on our Facebook page of stuff that we're doing. Get yourself out of your comfort zone. Do you have an experiment? It can be money related or not money related, if you'd like. That our
Sure,
audience
I have
can
two
do.
money-related ones. One is to
Do
do
it.
a cash diet for a month and see what happens.
Explain
and
that.
two, okay, so a cash diet is, as it sounds, you can only pay for things in cash. Obviously, there are certain bills that you have to pay online, or if they're booking like a plane ticket or whatever, I get it. But you will first run your cash flow, so how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, including savings, and then the remainder is what you have left to spend in the month, assuming that you're in the black and you actually have a surplus after you run those numbers.
That's good.
Then my suggestion is to divide that number by 4, and then that's how much money you have to spend each week. You go to the ATM, take it out in cash, and you have to pay just in cash. Because there is certainly a different thing that happens in your brain when you have to actually hand Andrew Jackson's scowling face across to a merchant as opposed to swiping your card. And people will always tell me like, oh, that's so not true. I spend way more money when I use cash.
So
No,
not
you
true.
realize that you spend more money when you're spending it in cash. You're spending the same. You're just like, oh shit, this is happening now.
That's true.
So true.
Oh, goodness. All right, that's a good one. For a month, huh?
Well, and there's certain things that you know you're going to have to buy with a card, right? So the other thing that I say to do is say that you need to buy something on Amazon. Like, okay, I buy dog food, obviously, for my dog every month. It's cheapest to buy on Amazon. But then what you do is when you make that transaction, let's say it's $20, take that $20 out of your wallet for that week, because then you've technically already spent that money, and then just kind of roll it over into the next week and take $20 fewer out of the ATM the following week.
I like it.
There are many hacks.
Challenged.
Game. Yeah, that's it. That's a good hack. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. You are the author of The Broke Millennial. Where can people get that information, get the book, learn more about you, find you, follow you?
Sure, I'll do my whole rundown. So you can buy, the book is officially called Broke Millennial, Stop Scraping By and Get Your Financial Life Together. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Powell's, Indie, wherever you buy your books, maybe even at your local bookstore. If it's a small indie boutique, it's at some of those as well. And you can also find me on Twitter at Broke Millennial, Facebook also Broke Millennial, Instagram at Broke Millennial Blog. And I will add on that if you buy the book after hearing this podcast and email me at info, I-N-F-O, at brokemillennial.com. Remember, millennial has 2 N's, 2 L's. People forget that. And you put Millennial Experiment in the subject line, then I will send you a free unpublished bonus chapter of the book.
Awesome.
Thank you, Erin.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
For those who doubted me, yeah, this is payback. And I've been on my grizzy, yeah, since way back. No sir, and I don't drive a Maybach. But guess what I did? I finished paying, selling Maybach. Maybach. 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 My name is D1. Let me tell you what I've been through when it come to Sally. She call me at least twice a day. She want our money badly. Calling me from different numbers. Ooh, she think she slick, but I got them all memorized. I hit ignore quick. Needed tuition, needed room and board. Had to pay for books, so I took out loans to feed the boy. Graduated, wasn't making quite enough to pay him back. Went in default, messed my credit up. Check my Equifax. I ain't proud of that, I'm more proud of that. I ain't drowning that. I got 2 jobs, really got on my grind. No time to whine, I can't ride the pine. In the game right now, my time to shine. Started paying them loans back one at a time. Got them down, till I paid them all off. Peace sign. For those who doubted me, yeah, this is payback. And I've been on my grizzy, yeah, since way back. No sir, and I don't drive a Maybach. But guess what I did? I finished paying, selling Maybach. Maybach. 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 Look, walk inside my crib, yeah, you know I just had a long day. Just got off of work, they got me drove. My boss kept me late. Walk inside the kitchen, grab a dish, and then I fix a plate. Bread, beans, and rice on a Monday. Then I sit down on the sofa, grab the remote, and turn on the news. Open up my laptop, kick off my shoes. I see that I got an email from Sally Mae. Did another month pass that I forgot to pay? Oh no, hope this email ain't wrong. It said congratulations on paying back your student loans. I took a screenshot, boy, I had to save that. Then I hit my homeboy like, I finished paying, selling Maybach. Maybach. 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 Look, is it $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, or maybe it's more? Is it $80,000, $90,000, $100,000? How much do you owe? Is it $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, or maybe it's more? Is it $80,000, this is payback. And I've been on my grizzy, yeah, since way back. No sir, and I don't drive a Maybach. But guess what I did? I finished paying